Hello, this is Fam Electric Ghost. You're on the show right now. So Kyle.
Oh, nice to meet you.
Yeah, you're coming in a low faded.
Hey, hold on.
Hello? Yeah, I'm not hearing you now at all.
Can you hear me now?
Now I got you. So
That's good.
Okay, so we're recording, so I'm going to start it again with the little brief intro. This is Fam Electric Ghost. I'm a podcaster on Anchor FM, and we have Insidia, and you're a musician producer from Sheffield, England, right?
Yeah, from Sheffield, England.
So, I sent you the questions, and we're going to start with the questions I sent you. And I just wanted to kind of do a brief little mention. I had interviewed someone you collaborated with. Yeah, previously. So we'll talk about that when we get to the song. But yeah, we'll start with the questions. Like what age did you get into music?
It's a good question actually, because I sort of took interest in music around the age of about 8, because my dad and my great aunt were both really into music, and I was brought up in a house basically with lots of like 80s rock, 90s rock, and I think it was about the age of 8, yeah, definitely. Then I got my first guitar, but I didn't really get into it until I was about 12, like properly.
So you've always been into acoustic rather than electric guitar, or do you play both electric and acoustic?
I play them both. I say that I prefer different reasons. Like the acoustic, I think it sounds beautiful quite naturally, whereas if you ask me, an electric is easier to play and a lot louder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess you just have to let's do like Curtis Mayfield or Hendrix. Like you can get or Clapton, you can get more technique into a electric if you're at that kind of level. But the acoustic kind of shows like what you can really do without a lot of tricks on it, unless you throw a lot of pedals. You can always throw pedals on the guitar, but so when you started, what made you decide to write your own music? Because some people get into music and they work with orchestras or they become studio musicians. They don't maybe write their own music. What made you feel like you wanted to write your own music? Oh, I'm not hearing you. You dropped off.
But yeah, it started when I was in a band with a friend of mine, and he'd write like quite a few like riffs and stuff.
Yeah, a little bit of that got cut off, so I missed the first part.
It's okay. I'm gonna. What happened was basically, it got cut off.
Yeah, a little bit got cut off when you first answered the question, so maybe start at the answer.
All right, it's okay. I'm gonna go downstairs so I'm closer to router, so that might help the connection a bit.
Yeah, I mean I can hear you now, but I missed the first half of your answer.
No worries. It's fine. Yeah, I'm ready whenever you are, and I'll get the answer.
Well, the question was when did you decide that you wanted to write your own music? Like, what made you decide that you wanted to do original music?
All right then. Yeah, I can answer that. So basically, the reason that I started writing my own original music was mainly for just expression at first, so that I could just I didn't exactly put stuff out when I first started writing music. I just kept a lot of it. It was more writing for myself personally than it was to actually have anyone hear it.
So yeah, I see that you actually started to go for a degree in music. So you really took it seriously. If you want to get a degree, So, and
I've
I
already
think,
I've
yeah.
already got it. Yeah, I finished it last year, the degree. This project was started for it, but this project's got a really weird story
Hmm.
behind it. But yeah, I went for a degree. Um, I did my like college course in music, and then I went for a degree. And there were a lot of really good people that I met along the way doing that. All of them were like really good musicians or producers, but it was like an all rounder sort of
Hmm.
course. So you did a bit of mixing, a bit of learning how to put a show together, some live performances, writing, and music history, stuff like that.
What school did you go to?
I went to it while doing it at college. It was called Norton College, but eventually it all got moved to Hillsborough College. So
Hmm.
the course that I study on is currently the one that's ran at Hillsborough. But I didn't go to any actual uni for it. I just went on to higher education at the college that I originally studied at.
Hmm. So the project in Insidia, was that actually part of your degree? You got your professors to like make that like a coursework?
What was? Oh, hold on a second. Basically, what happened was I was in my final year, and we were given the a final major project, and you could choose whatever you wanted. But so basically, if you wanted to do composition, you had to write a full album.
Hmm.
But it had to be a concept album, so it had to have a theme and everything, and you had to really get in depth.
Yeah.
Whereas if you wanted to put on a show, you could put on a show, but you'd have to get. I don't know what the criteria were for that because I didn't do it. I did the album, but I ended up getting one of my friends in who sings called Rose, and we did this album together for my degree. But like, how do I put it? After the degree finished, even though the project was just created for that degree, just for that album, we decided that we wanted to continue and take the project further.
So is Rose Regina Faye or is that a different person?
No, that's a different person. No, that's a different person. Regina
So the
Faye.
first, yeah. So the first project you worked with a Rose when you were
Yeah,
in school.
yeah, that is correct.
Is that project, was that released on the Spotify?
It's not been released because what is it? We were planning to get some videos done for it,
Hmm.
but due to obviously what's going off in the world, it's quite difficult to get
To get
something
some.
like that. Yeah, to get that together, and I'm a bit too attached to it. I don't want to like put it out when it's not got the stuff that
Oh,
complements it.
so you got to bring it to the studio. You got to master it. Do you have to do more overdubs, or is more work you got to do on it?
Um, it's all written, but I don't put it back when we recorded. I didn't have all the like because I recently like acquired some Spitfire software,
Hmm.
and we back at the time we were using really cheap patches for like the orchestras that are in it. And I
Oh,
mean,
okay.
you can make them sound good, but I just wasn't that good with them at the time. So going back, redoing all that, and just getting it mastered properly.
Oh, so you like do it with like deeper plugins, or doing it with soft synths and being able to add the orchestral instruments that you really wanted.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just make it a bit more fleshed out.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's interesting because I have leads me to, like you said, you had this collaboration with Rose. We haven't heard that, but Dior, your single from 2020, is with Regina Faye. She's an artist that we talked to earlier this year.
yeah.
Um, we talked to her actually twice on some of the projects she's working on. So maybe we could talk about that song and how that came about, how you collaborated with her in 2020, given what's going on with Corona. How do you guys do that?
How did we do that? Well, I'll tell you what, it was a lot of what everyone were doing in first lockdown in UK, which was Zoom calls and frantic text messaging. So like, what were it? We basically like we'd met each other on I think it was Submit Hub, somewhere along the way on there, and when I just put out Into Infinity, and I think she just put out Kaleidoscope,
Yeah.
and we sort of started talking because we had this mutual respect for each other's work, and eventually the collab just sort of came from there. But it was her that came out with this idea, with the actual like core of the track, and she was like, "Oh, I've got this idea for this song. I've got a chord progression, and I think I've got some lyrics. Do you want to work on it with me?" So I got onto like a Zoom with her, and she started coming out with all these lyrics that are in like an ancient language. And I'm not gonna lie to you, at first I think she could see it on my face. I was miffed. I didn't know what was going on. Like, I'm like, is this? Are you serious? And but I think that in all that track turned out really good.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful track. I like her work, and it does work well with your work. I mean, you guys have a synergy to your sound. I can see you guys doing like more.
Yeah, I'd love to. Sorry about that. If you heard any of that, notifications came through on my phone.
That's okay. I didn't hear it.
That's good. That's good. I was immediately like, shit. But
No. Luckily, this app somehow keeps that from coming through. So it's
good. That's good. Yeah. But yeah, I get what you mean. Like, I'd like to work some more with her, definitely. But at the moment, I'm just like currently wanting to just like I'm practicing a lot of like composition exercises at the minute, especially with orchestras. And
yeah. I feel like, yeah, you did like a soundtrack work type of song with like "The Dream Is Dead."
yeah, that was actually for a friend's short film. But
Oh, so it's actually on the indie film. That's actually a soundtrack to an indie film.
yeah, it's on it's on one of them. I think it got shortlisted at a film festival. Yeah,
That's awesome.
like I was well chuffed when I heard about that because I don't know, it was one of those things that are released and some people were like, this ain't as good as the first one, and I was like, damn. So
Well, I like it. Well, I, truth be told, I'm an electronic musician. I initially started with like soundscapes or sound paintings. I didn't have vocals, but then I kind of got into vocoders. I got into Roland VT3 VT4s, and
yeah,
I started creating characters with them. And I don't like using like autotune. I like to use the vocoder to create characters, kind of like the way Prince created Camille.
yeah,
The idea of using it to do like do something other than yourself, kind of get into a Ziggy Stardust kind of way. But
that's
I did start like with just atmospheric soundscapes, so I appreciate like your songs like Colors and The Dream Is Dead and Into Infinity. So that's kind of where I started with my synthesizers because I'm a hardware synth guy. I have tons of Rolands and Moogs and stuff like that. So I see you have acoustic guitar, you have electric guitar, but you use like MIDI controllers with like soft synths for your synth stuff.
yeah. I like to. What I'm trying to do is sort of like get all like the electric guitar and the acoustic guitar and mix it in with the software. But I'm having to learn the software more than I am the guitars because I grew up playing guitars.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but I found that interesting when you said that you use a vocoder to create like characters because I have lots of like ideas sometimes about, let's say, like like concept albums like The Wall.
Yeah. I'm
And
deep into that.
that's what the album that I did for the final project was. It was basically just it was basically someone's journey through 5 stages of grief, and I thought, right, you could turn that into an actual concept.
Well, you come from a place where the rock opera was kind of born, like with like Pete Townsend and Tommy in Quadrophenia.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that growing up, I'm in my 50s. Tommy was a revelation to me. But I got into music. I bought it on vinyl back when vinyl was showing my age, and I was just enamored with it. I kind of wore it out, and I said, "Wait,
Yeah.
this is." And I just got into Pink Floyd. I got into Yes. I got into Genesis with Peter Gabriel, and I like the idea that with music you could tell a story, and you could do these rock operas, or you could do these progressive concept albums. And I've been in that zone for like 20 years writing stuff like that. That's where I live. But it's interesting to find somebody, in this age that's not just trying to do Spotify singles,
Yeah,
um, that you're actually trying to do something that's kind of like not the hippest thing to do today, but I think it's a cool. Everything's allowed today. Everybody does everything. Everybody mixes all the genres, and it's cool to see somebody like yourself, going into that form, because that's something I appreciate it.
yeah. I think it's I don't know why, but it's something that's always appealed to me because, like, I mean, sure, I'm likely to at some point collaborate with people and just drop a single, but I've always like when you listen to an album, it's a start to end thing, isn't it? So it'd make more sense to have it as a story that's all going all the way through.
Yeah, I mean, I started, before I got into Tommy, I was a big Beatle head, a Beatle fan.
Yeah,
I was like, when they got the Sergeant Peppers, and then they got the idea that the studio is the instrument, and
yeah,
that George Martin style recording, kind of like, the kind of Phil Spector kind of concept, that you use the studio to like build something that's other than just a live performance, that you can use it like, Monet uses like the painting, that you can build a sound painting. And
yeah.
Pink Floyd took that even
I
further.
get you.
But the idea that you can do that, that's why I'm into synthesizers. That's why I have like Moogs. That's why I have like Roland Jupiters and stuff, because it allows you to build stuff like that. The hardware sense kind of harken to that age where people would just get enamored and totally lost in their subtractive synthesis machines. And that's how I feel that the authenticity of like a mini Moog or a Jupiter, an Oberheim, that those type of instruments lend themselves to that kind of sound design.
Yeah, I get you. I mean, I was listening just before I joined this. Like, I was listening to her, and this is I think she's a good at. But Grimes.
Oh yeah, Grimes, she's really into electronic, yeah.
Yeah,
Kind of new
I
age.
listened to her. I was just like, this is mental.
She does a lot of interesting stuff with electronic music. I'm a very much into anybody that takes kind of like, kind of Brian Eno craft work, kind of electronic, and then takes it to the future.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people, they got that kind of that grime sound. There's like, she's got her own kind of genre. People try to emulate her, kind of like the way they emulate, some of the classic synthesis, like, Emerson and even Townsend. I think Townsend's one of the greatest synthesizer players ever, because he actually took the instrument and looked at it in a different way than a keyboardist. He kind of took that modular synthesis that everybody does today. I mean, Pete was doing it all over Lifehouse. If you get into the idea of Lifehouse, which is Who's Next, it's all these experiments with modular synthesis.
Yeah.
And it's just that kind of stuff is like, and guitar players, when they approach synthesizers, I think they come up with different things. Like the way Eddie Van Halen approached Jump on an Oberheim.
Oh yeah.
It's like, it's totally I love when I see somebody that's not like a piano player or a keyboardist get into a synthesizer, because they always come up with something new.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I think that like what was it? There was I don't know if you've heard of him, but Nick Gordon, like I think that he's pretty much just a guitarist that's gone over to like synthesizer, and he works mainly in like films and well, not even films, but video games. And
video games is a big place for us now.
yeah. I mean, he's absolutely crushed it. I mean, I think I remember buying this game called Doom 2016, just popping it in and just hearing his soundtrack come on, and I was just like, oh, this just put me in the mood that this game wants me to be in straight away.
Yeah, well, it's just interesting because like, with the limitations on how artists get paid now, the game platforms give, people who are doing atmospheric music or doing synthesis, it gives us another place to go,
Yeah, I agree.
because we can take these big concepts, and you have a lot more space to work on a game. It's hours and hours worth of music that they need.
Yeah.
And if you're a composer, it gives you a place. Like where else in the market could you put that many hours worth of work into?
It's not only that, but
Other than
you can sit down and you're actually going to not have people telling you to not overthink it. You're allowed to overthink it if you want. That's what.
yeah, it's great. It's like doing a soundtrack to a film, but these little mini films, which are video games today, are like mini films and TV shows, and so they need a lot of content.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the thing though. There's so many like good like soundtracks and that. There's been more soundtracks that I've enjoyed more than like actual albums that come out these days, if I'm honest.
Yeah, because people are so limited in what the market will bear. I'm always getting in trouble because all my songs are over 6 minutes. And then when I work with a record company, they always cut my stuff down. They'll put it out, but they'll take a 7-minute song and drop it down to 2 minutes and 47 seconds.
Nice little radio.
And I'm like,
so yeah.
Yeah, and I'm kind of like, okay, well, to get some money, okay, I'll do that. Yeah, I got hundreds of songs, so it's like, fine. I'll let one or two songs get manipulated like that. But most of the time, I would just put them out the way I want them to be, just because I don't want somebody taking my full idea and then just chopping it up.
Yeah, I get you on that. Because it's one of those things, though, isn't it? Like, I guess you've got to be ready to compromise sometimes, but there's other times where it's like, no, you can't really cut this song up because you're compromising what it is then.
Yeah, I mean, like that's telling like Pink Floyd to tear apart, like "Wish You Were Here" and he shorten things. It's like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
It's an idea. Like you can't shorten things in Tommy. You can't shorten Quadrophenia. You can't go look at like Peter Gabriel Genesis, like Lamb Lies on Broadway. You can't shorten those songs.
Yeah,
they're part of a suite. They're part of an idea, and that's why I love vinyl, and I like that the kids are getting back into vinyl. Because vinyl forces you to listen to the whole project.
Yeah, from start to finish.
You can't skip around like a playlist,
Yeah. I mean, it's like, yeah, that was something that took me by surprise, the vinyl revival. I'm not going to be like liar, but because I've got friends that are like younger than me, and that they'll post on like their Facebook or their Instagrams. Look what I got today. And it's like Queen 2 on vinyl. I'm like, man.
Yeah, they're all excited. Like my daughter, she's 20 and she's going back and getting like, songs in the key of life on vinyl.
Yeah.
And, we initially got a cheap vinyl, and then we went crazy and got some Austrian hi-fi set with 2 amps and stuff. But it's like, there's a lot of cool stuff for audiophiles, and it gets you back into the core. Like if you listen to vinyl, then you go, it's like, well, I got to get a tube amp.
Yeah.
Well, I got to get a good receiver. I got to get really good. Then it gets back to the quality of what, as musicians and producers, we want to create quality music, and then people are getting this compressed thing that goes onto an MP3 player
or YouTube
or their phone. Yeah, it's not what you wrote.
Yeah, I get you. I get you on that. I mean, it's like I think as well. Like speaking of vinyl, I've noticed as well. Like over here, it might just be over here, but a lot of people are like using analog mixing again and recording.
Oh yeah, analog mixing is big here too. And people are getting Neve boards. They're going and finding Neve boards, or they're paying the money to get a Neve board, and just because they want to do it on tape. There's places, in Louisiana, in Tennessee, there's studios that are actually running tape.
Yeah.
And they're running old analog boards, and it's like people, like if I got my mini Moog and I got a Jupiter 8, I don't want to get compressed by some digital, platform. I want to get it on the tape, and get it recorded so I don't lose. The reason why I've got like a Prophet 5 is because I want that Prophet 5 sound. I don't want a plug-in, that people, it makes it affordable so people can get it. But if I've got one, I want to capture it the way it sounds, you know.
Yeah, I get you. It just like it kind of like makes it sort of. It's like I was saying with like it could be even worse. Can even end up on YouTube. It's like the compression just takes away some of the actual
Yeah,
sound and the timbre of the instrument.
yeah, you can't get some of these really great guitars, you know. If I go back and I listen to like the Allman Brothers,
Yeah,
or I go, you know, listen to try to hear that Hammond B3, you know, going through the rotary, you know, speaker, and the vinyl, I can really hear it. And then sometimes they're dependent on the mix on some CDs or whatever. It's gotten taken away, you know,
yeah.
and it's not there. And I'm like, and I go back to my vinyl and it's like I can hear everything that I originally heard, and I'm like, you know, that's what I want. And that's the way, you know, I think I got my daughter into that because she's like, she saw the difference. I was able to show her, like, listen to this and then listen to that. Like, listen to Purple Rain on vinyl and then go listen to it on your MP3 and then see what the difference is. And she's wow. And then, you know, then she just got hooked.
I mean, Purple Rain is as good an album or song even as any to show off like the difference because that track's just got such a mixing wise. I think the vibe of it. It's
Yeah, it
well,
was live recorded. It's a live recorded kind of overdub thing that, you know, that's why that whole album has that kind of vibe. There's a lot of stuff that was actually live recorded in like a truck. They actually took like a mixing truck and had it at Avenue. I think it was maybe even First Avenue in Minneapolis. They recorded a bunch of stuff live, and then they overdubbed it. And I think like the Who does that a lot. I mean, well, they did it a lot on Who's Next. Is a lot of stuff was like live recorded and overdubbed,
yeah,
and that's why it sounds, you know, the way it does. It's like I tend to like that process. I tend to do a lot of my stuff in that way because I think if you live record something, you just and then you overdub on it, it just has like a feel that you can't get from like a sterile type of recording. I think
yeah.
that, and I've always been very impressed with bands that do that, and I've always tried to, you know, keep that kind of vibe in my music.
I mean, what it makes me think of is as well is like obviously if you're doing a live, you're gonna get a bit of the atmosphere as well as the actual room sound, the room reverb itself.
Yeah, that's what you're going for. You're trying to get that, you know, because it's like, you know, every room sounds different. You know, if you're using, you know, different types of speakers, you know, and different amps, you're picking up that sound, and you're picking up the mistakes. You know, you're picking up the little clicks and clacks and different things in the room, and all that kind of adds to the sound. You know, that's why, you know, people sometimes, you know, they had the open mics, you know, running stuff, why you mic drums a certain way. Um, you know, it's kind of the art of that. You know, you went to school for it, you know what I mean. But there's a whole art to like sound engineering. You know, is half the equation on your album. You know, is getting that right sound. And you get a really great engineer. You know, you totally can mix
Yeah,
the record.
I mean it's like as well. It's like you on topic of like live recordings. It's like you said. You can't really fake it with them. So if there's a mistake in that live performance, you know, it's there, but it adds to it. So,
Yeah, it's character. Like a lot of people forget, like Hendrix, he live recorded pretty much everything, you know, in the open studios, and he would just, you know, do so many different variations, and you know, even Clapton and all these guys, you know, they used to record kind of as bands, you know, the whole band, they mic the band, and they run through it, and all these variations, you know, you get the box set, and it's like, wow, there's all these variations, and it's like, which one is the best one? Is that they kind of had a feel. It's like, well, they felt this one was the best one. But, you know, the mistakes and all, I mean, that's part of the classic
yeah.
age of music is you didn't let your computer tell you that the BPM was off. You didn't let you tell you that you were like in a different key. Maybe you did a key change by mistake, but it actually
Oh
brought
man,
character to the
I've
music,
had
you
nightmares
know?
with stuff like that. You know, like it's like you said, no, you know, when you're in the studio, it, the computer will tell you, won't it? Every little detail. If so,
Yeah.
I'm not going to name any names, but I was in this band once, and I don't know how many times I tracked this solo for them. but they'd be like one little note at the end of this like furious like 1 minute long solo. It was just awful to play. It really hurt you.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think they take the life out of music. Which, if you listen to some music today, they've got it sounding
Exactly,
too
that's
perfect,
it.
and there's something wrong about that sometimes.
It's just inhuman. I wouldn't expect like to see a drummer live play all notes on his kick drum at a certain velocity while he's doing some silly fill at like 220 beats per minute. I wouldn't expect it, but you get that a lot.
No, you shouldn't
No,
expect it.
you get it a lot now on actual studio recordings. To the point where you're like, this.
But the problem is they would never let a Mitch Mitchell or a Keith Moon. They wouldn't be allowed to play the way they played, because the producer keep on stopping them, because they didn't keep time all the time. They kind of rolled through the whole song. If you listen to Keith Moon, he's pretty much soloing through the whole song.
Yeah,
He's not keeping time. Pete's actually keeping time, and so that type of thing is not allowed today, because people are so kind of retentive on the beat, and we're like, you can't be that. I think that's taking the life out of music. Because it's not letting people be musicians. Because part of being a musician is you got to be willing to take risks, and willing to kind of go off and feel it. A lot of it's feeling. I'm an African American musician. Most of what we do is like jazz and blues and funk. It's all feel. It's all heart. And I feel you might not get it the same way every time. I mean, we can kind of get in that same zone all the time, but it's like it's how I feel today. It's going to get
what
reflected
you're
in the music.
thinking about and everything. Like, I mean, you could give. I feel like, yeah, you could give like say a happy guitarist. Say, are you into Gary Moore by any chance? You ever heard of Gary Moore?
Oh yeah, I love.
Yeah, I feel like you could give like say a guitarist who's had an exceptionally good week. That main melody line from that, and then give a guitarist who's had an exceptionally bad week the same melody line and expect instantly different results.
different.
Even though the same melody.
Yeah, you should. Yeah, I mean, look at Neil Young. I mean, Neil Young is what I loved about him is he was willing. He could go and do a perfect Nashville country recording
Yeah.
where everything's perfect, right? But then he could go with Crazy Horse and do something like
Yeah.
Tonight's the Night, where it's like it's off key, it's the notes are off, the rhythm's off, everything's always like it's almost like it's falling apart. He called it the ditch. He created these albums called a Ditch trilogy. He said, I did, all these big Nashville albums, and so I want to take it to the ditch. And I wanted just to kind of reinvent the sound. He kind of like the godfather of punk. He kind of came up with this idea of that you could be sloppy, you could be kind of pain driven, and have that reflect kind of like the Velvet Underground or Big Star. He had this feel, and there's nothing like that. A lot of bands. Well, I guess Nirvana was like that.
Nirvana was definitely. I mean, Scentless Apprentice sticks out to me as proof of that. I don't know if you've heard that track.
Well, yeah, I got all their stuff. I mean, I was kind of drawn to Nirvana because I'm a big, Crazy Horse fan. I said, well, these guys are kind of pulling a Crazy Horse thing, and they call it grunge, but it sounds like, what Neil's been doing for years. But it's like, even Neil appreciated it. They were friends, he heard that Crazy Horse sound in what Nirvana was doing, and it's got that punk aesthetic, and that's why I'm drawn to bands like Black Flag and Husker Du. The kind of the Replacements. That's always good to have a little punk aesthetic. Bands like Joy Division, Television. You get this kind of feel.
It's like a grimy sort of energy in it. Like, you get what I mean with like.
Yeah, well, Trent Reznor brings that with sense. I saw Nine Inch Nails at Woodstock. That famous performance where people were throwing mud at Green Day. I was actually physically there. And that night, the same day that the Green Day was getting thrown mud on them, Trent Reznor did this amazing set and showed how powerful you could be with like analog synthesizers and guitars, and that you don't have to be melodic. You can have that punk feel, and that to me was like the way Joy Division was. is they have this kind of early goth, neo-romantic
I get
feel.
you.
They later, that kind of feel is so cool. It's as cool as the
Yeah.
blues to me. I can
mean,
get
for
into it.
me, what were it? It's like the stuff that I really found that attracted me to, say, Nirvana. It was a lot of people say that they don't like Kurt Cobain's voice, but I'm like, how can you not? It's so
It's brilliant.
he's not the
Brilliant.
best singer technically, but the emotion that he can bring through, even though it's a lot of like pain and hurt, it really hooks in you.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's deeper than Eddie Vedder. I mean, everybody thought Eddie Vedder was doing that, but Kurt was like really the
Yeah,
king of grunge. Kurt was the one. I mean, Eddie, without Kurt, Eddie became the big guy. But Kurt always, his songs have a little more authenticity, kind of like
yeah,
John Lennon or something. He had this feel that, like, man, that guy's got it. He's got it.
yeah,
And that's what you want when you hear that kind of thing. You want that
yeah. I mean,
passion.
for me, I guess like most people, it was when I first listened to Smells Like Teen Spirit when I was going through my angsty teenager phase, and I was like, he's literally me, you know.
Yeah, that's the whole thing about punk, is it made you feel like, well,
Yeah,
maybe I could do that. That's when people saw the Sex Pistols and they saw the Clash. They were like, wow, I can go do that. And you get the bands like the Ramones and Television and Joy Division. And people feeling like, oh, we can actually, we don't have to be
yeah.
Keith Emerson. We don't have to be Jimmy Page. We don't
Oh, I
have to
do
be
love a
Eric
bit of
Clapton.
Jimmy Page. No,
We
do
can,
love a bit of Jimmy Page.
yeah, we can have some passion, and we don't have to be like a total
Yeah,
virtuoso.
I mean,
But within that though, you can get to be a virtuoso
oh
within
yeah,
your own genre.
definitely. I mean, I think virtuoso as a term, it gets confused a lot. It's like
Yeah,
most modern accounts, like let's say someone like Hans Zimmer, he's a virtuoso, but you don't catch anyone calling him a virtuoso. So it's
yeah,
like,
that's true.
I've noticed that the term's dying a lot now. I think it was like, it's a bit of like nerdy knowledge, this, but I think it was mostly like in romantic period of music, like back in like the 19th century, where it was like a really popular term.
Yeah, Bach, yeah, and Beethoven, all the classical guys. They're probably but you get a guy like Hendrix to me,
Yeah.
like Sun Ra or Coltrane. In jazz, you can kind of see it. Like in jazz, you can see it immediately. You listen to the Coltrane trio, you listen to Miles Davis, and kind of blue. You listen to
Giant
that stuff, you're like, man,
steps.
like even like Sun Ra. I mean, I'm a big Sun Ra fan because they're like this kind of unheard, kind of unsung jazz outfit. They were like the kings of like bebop, and then created like this kind of funkadelic space jazz before funkadelic
Yeah.
was created, with like space in place. And that kind of stuff to me has always appealed to me. Is like the unsung bands like the Velvet Underground and Big Star and Sun Ra, bands that people later become like in the canon, but at the time they were playing, people didn't appreciate them. I always find a lot in finding those bands. Because hey, luckily the recording gets saved. Sometimes the connection drops it off, but I think we just had a connection drop.
Yeah, I think that we did, because I was listening to you talk and I was like, it didn't seem like it was the end of the session. But we were on to what were it? I think you'd mentioned that certain bands not being appreciated like at the time.
Yeah, like Big Star and the Velvet Underground, Lou Reed.
Yeah, that reminds me.
Yeah.
Black Sabbath. It reminds me of Black Sabbath because I know in the 60s, because I'm a massive Black Sabbath fan.
Yeah, nobody liked the critics hated them. Like Rolling Stone didn't like them, Billboard didn't like them, Melody Maker didn't like them, nobody liked them.
But now they're like, well, I mean, just look at Ozzy Osbourne. He's one of the most famous men on the planet.
Well, it's just weird. So like even like Led Zeppelin, the critics didn't like them, and then later they kind of rewrote Rolling Stone went and rewrote all the reviews. It's like, I remember that they didn't like, and suddenly they do well, and then 10 years, 20 years later, they start rewriting the reviews and they start giving them 4 or 5 stars, and they didn't give them that when they first came out.
Yeah, it just shows, no, doesn't it? Like, I think everybody likes an underdog in some cases, but like with Led Zeppelin, there were no doubt about it. No, I reckon that they were going to make it because they were just,
Well, the fans loved it, but is that the critics, for some reason, didn't think it was as impressive as what Yes was doing or Emerson, Lake and Palmer was doing. They were always into this kind of heady music, right? And so they were like, oh, they're doing this kind of cosmic, blues. Like, they're taking the blues and taking rock and, bluesman ideas and then throwing this kind of cosmic power on it. And then Jimmy Page is a great guitar player, picks great chord choices, great structural choices.
Yeah.
And when he picks the song, and John Paul Jones, a great bass player, great keyboardist. John Bonham's an awesome drummer, power drummer. And then Plant is doing stuff with his vocals with that kind of high range. You get the Axls of the Rhodes of the world, all cloning him.
Exactly. They were the perfect band. I mean, I remember because it was funny that we go on to Led Zeppelin because they were the band that got me into actually like taking music seriously, like actually learning songs, because I just loved Jimmy Page. I was just like, oh, these riffs.
But the riffs are just, they kind of rooted in the blues, but then he's got these interesting chord choices on the power chords and even on the, the acoustic guitar stuff he used to do. And it's just, he is a studio musician. He's a great musician, and he brought musicianship to that genre. He brought the seriousness. Because if you listen to the Zeppelin songs, you deconstruct them, you look at the parts, you're like, these things are great. They're fantastic. The choices they've made to make these songs, they're like, these are really well, composed songs. And you're like, damn.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there was like some disputes that what were it? That they did steal some songs.
Well, everybody steals something, but it's a matter of they actually didn't credit. I think the big problem with them compared to the Stones is Keith, and the crew, they would credit where they got stuff from, and Page made a mistake sometimes of not crediting. They would take it Robert Johnson or Lead Belly. And, being an African American, I'm kind of like, well, we really should have gave due for that. Because I know he was listening to that stuff. That's where he got it, But to not put it down, that's not cool. But, I still appreciate the music. I have all the Zepp albums. But I just think that he should have pulled, he should have done what Jagger and Keith did in actually crediting where they got stuff from. I think that was his mistake. But
I mean, the thing is it was less Jagger, but I know that the Rolling, I think it was, I forget the guy's name that were managing them at one point, but he managed the Beatles as well.
Epstein, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, not him. Another guy, but I think it was there was this song by The Verve that came out, weren't they, called Bittersweet Symphony?
Oh they took that. They took a lifting part of it. Yeah.
Oof, yeah.
That was the problem with sampling. Like sampling, you can get in big trouble.
Oh yes. I mean, that's why, like, if I need samples or anything, I went out and I got myself this little like hand recorder thing.
Oh, we do field recordings. Yeah, field recording is probably the best way to do samples.
Yeah. I've got like this really great sample that I was stood at the train station and I was just waiting for this train to come in, caught the announcement for it, and I needed like the sound of like chattering, loads of people talking, but I was like, right, we're in the middle of a pandemic, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Waiting until lockdown lifted and just went to the nearest pub and just got all of that. But you can hear some people fighting on it, which wasn't good. But I got it. I went a bit off topic there. Sorry.
No, that's. I think I always tell people, like, I understand people, they take samples, and hip hop and rap is kind of necessary for the game. And you get guys like the Bomb Squad on Public Enemy. They created great layering on samples, or like De La Soul. they were like the kings of using samplers because they did it in an artistic way. If you do what the Bomb Squad did, or you do what De La Soul did, they were able to layer the samples and kind of wall of sound. And they did it in such a way it's not recognizable. It's not like Ice Ice Baby stealing like Bowie Queen. It's very unique take on taking that music. It's kind of like granular synthesis. And what I've always done is I like to resample my Moog. I'll just go take my Moog and sample that, and then slice it up. Because then I don't have to pay anybody. I can just have my Moog create something and just resample it. So taking a synth and taking like an old Prophet 5 and resampling, white noise or pink noise or blue noise off of it, you can do a lot of cool stuff. You don't have to like take somebody else's work. You can kind of sample your own work. And that's like a new technique that people are kind of getting into.
I mean, there's I don't know, like if you listen to a lot of the genre, but there's this that they inhabit, but there's this band that's British. They've really made a lot of waves over here this year, and I know that they've got a bit of a following in America. But a band called Loathe, and they do a lot of that. I'll have to send you a link to them sometime.
Yeah, send me a link to that because I don't think I've heard that. That might be more like local, but or more like regional. But I'm always into listening to new stuff. That's all I do,
Yeah, they're very heavy, but it's like that. It's the production quality. There's just something like. Have you ever? I know it might be an odd ball to throw, but have you ever like watched one of those Silent Hill films or played one of the video games?
Oh yeah, I used to have that. My brother was, he had used to get me into that game big time.
Yeah, their aesthetic is very much like that.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah,
so it's cool.
I can get into that. That sounds cool.
I'll have to send you some across at some point. But
so when you record, are you using a DAW? Which DAW do you use?
I used Logic.
Logic, okay, yeah, a lot of people like that.
It's very. I used to use Cubase, and I learned how to do most of the stuff on Cubase, but then I
moved over.
Yeah, moved over to Logic when I was like an apprentice at a studio called Canal Works for a year, and the guy there called Dominic, he used Logic, and he jumped over from like Pro Tools and stuff. He showed me how to, and it's so much easier than any other DAW that I've really used, if I'm honest.
Yeah, a lot of people tell me that they like the workflow in Logic. That as a musician, you don't get caught up in a lot of stuff you don't need to get caught up into.
Exactly.
It makes it's like a musician like DAW. But I'm kind of like I like to use hardware, so I'm using like big Tascam and Zoom R24s and old Fostex and stuff, because I like that, being able to punch in and punch out and just not have a grid and just go in and just overdub. And so I that's where I live. That's where I started. I started on Fostex and Tascam like tape machines, and I just like that feel because I can go and just do whatever, and I don't have to worry about compression. Whatever I can get my synth to do, it will record, and so I don't have to worry about it getting lost. I mean, I do have to play it right, but then it makes me play the song and learn the song.
That's the thing. It's like when I was doing like Into Infinity, the piano part that comes in that was harmonized. I was sat there and I was like, right, there's no way anyone will ever actually be able to play this on a piano without someone else, stood beside them, because you've got to play bass notes, the main melody, the harmonized melody on top. But I was like, but sod it, I'm going to learn it anyway and then play it in rather than program it, just because, I might meet a pretty girl one day and she might play a piano and be like, just play those notes and make a pretty sound.
I think
I've done it.
I think it was interesting because I heard a story about like Tommy, and initially the Who was going to do tons of overdubs for Tommy, like what they did on Quadrophenia, but then they said, well, we want to be able to play it live, and so since they wanted to play it live, they didn't do as many. because they wanted to be able to replicate it with who they had. They didn't want to add extra musicians. And so that's kind of the place a lot of bands are in now. Is like they do so many overdubs, they got to run something on the sequencer, and then they're kind of locked into the groove. Because they're like, if they go out with all their backing tracks, they got to like run all their backing tracks, and they're kind of locked into the groove to stay in sync with the backing tracks. And then it becomes like less of a live performance, and it sounds more like the single. It doesn't actually sound like, I want to see a band play their song and actually do a variation. But when they're stuck on those backing tracks, then they can't do it as much.
See, I'd rather like, I mean, backing tracks don't always hurt a performance for me, but like I know because my great granddad, he was on he used to like perform on Sheffield gigging circuit because he had a very operatic voice.
Mm-hmm.
But what they'd do was they'd get in, if they needed them, they'd get in actual performers to fill in the, what they couldn't do at the time, because obviously, my great granddad, so they didn't have the means we did. But like, I feel like if you're using backing tracks, as long as it doesn't take away from the actual, live performance, it's good.
I mean, there are ways to do it. You can do it in such a way where you can kind of mute and unmute tracks and still play stuff, solos and stuff. It's just if you're locked in to like the length of the song and you can't like change it. My whole thing is sometimes I had different versions of my song, and then I made put the one out that I put out. But when I played live, I might go play version 3 instead of version 4.
Yeah.
And if I'm locked in, the backing tracks are different. And so like they're not going to be the same. So it's going to come out different. And if somebody was waiting for me to do it the same way, it's like, well, I might not do it the same way.
Yeah, but that's good though, because it's like that reminds me of I don't know if you've heard of Dream Theater, but I imagine you will have.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah, they're brilliant band. I mean, I don't like the guy who sings from his voice that much, but instrumentally they're all
that sounds great. Yeah,
but I remember because I've seen them live twice. I remember finding out while there, because a lot of Dream Theater fans, that go to gigs, there's a lot of them that follow them religiously, and apparently every night they do a gig, the set is different. It might be set small in like the teeniest way, or they might throw an improvisation section into a song, and they've got it pre-planned, but it's like, if I were to go and see a band live and they did stuff like that and they still had, backing tracks in, I wouldn't mind as much, because I'd be like, what I'm seeing is spontaneous.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like why I used to go see Parliament Funkadelic, because they would go play like a 20-minute version of Flashlight, and it was like, and every night they're going to do it different. They're like the Dead, like you see bands like that. You see bands like Allman Brothers. I would go see the Allman Brothers, and they were like a jam band, and there's like Dickie Betts and some of these guys from Government Mule, and these guys will just go off and do these like cosmic blues solos, and every night. I mean, there's a bass structure to most of the Allman Strong songs, but they would go off into this kind of jazz rock thing where they could just go off, and they come back. And it's like jazz bands do the same thing. If you go listen, to Miles Davis or Coltrane, they would go off, and then they come back, and they go off, and then they come back. And that's kind of like the ability to be able to do that. To me, is like, if the computer can allow you to do that, that's cool. But if it keeps you from doing it, then it's not so cool.
You see, it's like from my time in like music school, I can definitely say that, like going off into wild, crazy stuff like that live, improvisations and just changing it up but keeping it together. It just shows how good those guys were as musicians, if you ask me.
Yeah, I mean, they were just like living that kind of era where everybody's trying to, everybody was trying to match Hendrix, trying to match Clap, and they're all trying to live in the same zone. And so they're all fans of each other. They're all in this kind of musical kind of caravan, and they were just like, okay, well, I'm going to step up my game because I know, Clapton's going to hear me or Jimmy Page is going to hear me and I want to blow him out. So I'm going to do this. And so it's like, there was this thing where like, you're not half stepping, you're trying to really kick ass,
It's a game of like, what is it? One-upmanship, but really friendly.
Yeah, they're all friendly. They all knew each other. They all hang together. But it's like, some of them is like, wow, like Dwayne Allman is like, damn, it's like he's just going off, and he was just so powerful with the way he did like the slide with the bottle, and then he came up with something new, and everybody's like, damn, it's like that's something new, and that's what's always cool in music when somebody finds something new, like when Hendrix is using his thumb to hold chords because he's left-handed. And that causes him to be able to do like, chords and notes at the same time on the guitar. And you're like, damn, that's cool. When somebody does something like Coltrane's doing the stuff he's doing, you're like, wow, that's why I listen to music, when I want to hear somebody pushing
it. That's what it is for me, really. It's like, I remember I was listening to a lot of like prog rock back when I was like 15, 16. And a friend of mine showed me a band called Tool. I don't know if you know
Tool. Yeah.
Oh my God, man. Way to shatter my worldview. That's all I'm going to say, because, they were just amazing. I mean, I'm not as into them now as I was, but I think they're a band where, again, like mentioning synths and like sound play in general, they really pushed it with that trippy vibe of theirs that they've got.
Yeah, it's like, like I'm big time into Steely Dan, just because of the mix. They used to take Motown session musicians and like jazz musicians and rock musicians and put them all in the same pot. And that's how you get like a Steely Dan, because you get this precision from these great Motown drummers. Like, like Motown drummers are like unbelievable, because they show you why you don't want a drum machine. Because they're like human drum machines. It's like they could do so many cool things with percussion and to make it like seem simple, but it's not. When you look at some of the stuff they used to do, the type of shuffles they would run on some of the Motown songs, they're somewhat complicated. They're like, damn, there's like a lot of stuff going on, but it sounds real catchy. It has the hook, but it's not easy to play. It'd be hard to find drummers today who can match what these guys can do. And
exactly.
And that's kind of like why, I think musicianship and live playing, the one thing about the COVID thing is like it's taken away that chance for these type of musicians to shine, because that's where these guys really they shine, because they're able to go out there and play. The guys who play the gigs, I feel sorry, for that type of, those guys, because they're really dependent on that. They kind of live off of that. And, I'm a writing musician. I can stay in my room and write all day, and I can do okay. But the guys who have to play live to survive, it's really been a nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, like, how do I put it? I know I've got a friend who's in a band, and they tour Europe quite a bit, and they were going to put out an album this year and tour it, but I think obviously due to stuff happening over here, regardless of the ongoing pandemic, because we've got Brexit as well, which in terms of passports and getting that all sorted, it becomes really expensive. They ended up having to, I think they've pushed back this album that they were going to do, as well as they've pushed back the touring. But I can understand them not wanting to put out an album and not be able to tour it,
Yeah, it's how we make money today. Like the way, second to some of the questions, like part of the cool thing today is I can find you on Spotify, I can find you, on Apple Music of the world, and get to you in a way that back in the 70s or 80s, I only got what the record companies were pushing, and that's kind of cool. But the bad side of that is that it's hard to make money in this age unless you do merch, or you do sync licensing, or you work with video game guys. You have to find all kinds of other ways to make money other than just the music.
I mean,
I think that's the big road.
merch is a good way to go, I think. But it's like you said. I reckon sync licensing is something to get into now more than ever, if I'm honest, from a business point of view.
Oh yeah.
Because how do I put it? There are going to be so many shows that are greenlit after this pandemic's done, which fingers crossed, touch wood, hopefully will be soon.
Yeah, you gotta get yourself signed up with like your like I'm in a thing called Music Gateway, and they have all these pitches all the time, and I've done a bunch of them. And
I did a trial with them. I did a free trial with them. Yeah, I just didn't. I didn't have the time really. I was like, I just want to put out stuff for Insidia, like.
But it's good to get into that, because once you get into sync licensing, you know, like you did that short film, but like once you do some films, then all the film people start looking at you. Because like, oh, you've done the formats, so then you know what to do. And so then once you get into that, you do a couple ads, and you get more ads. Because once you get your foot in the door, then people find out that you're there. And so that's just you know, it's a new gig. You know, and it's actually a better deal than me getting my U-Haul and driving to New York. Yeah, I got to pay the roadie. I got to stay in a hotel. Got to make sure people don't steal my gear. People don't steal my amps. You know, it's like a big hassle. I mean, I love playing New York. Not to say I don't love it, but the New York situation of like having to watch your gear and watch your van. You got a roadie watching the van. You got a roadie watching the gear. You know.
Yeah, I'm lucky on that part, because I've never gigged in a big city. I think the only city I've been in, I've only been to London, which is a really big city by like English standards. Like what, 3 times, and only one of them was for like a gig. So it's been okay.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, I love gigging, but there's just so much overhead, and there are people who are nefarious people who try to steal your amps. They'll try to steal your gear, you know. And then, you know, the promoters want to underpay you. You got, you know, I had guys like counting how many people were coming in, because we were getting paid by like the head count. And you had these guys who were like saying that, like, you know, there's only 250 people here. And then my roadie said, I counted on my clicker 350.
Yeah.
So trying to undercut what they pay us, you know, and it's like, come on. But that's the kind of stuff that goes on. And you're like, you know, that's one thing. Like now, I don't have to deal with that.
I've never had out like that. I had one incident in like the first proper band I was in where, we pushed. They only expected us to sell like 50, something like that, tickets. I think there were only 4 of us, and we were just. I just joined band and completed the lineup again after they'd been out of action for some time, and I still don't know what happened to this day. But the common like thought amongst all of us was that someone had stolen most of the money that we'd made.
Yeah, that's kind of common.
But we reckoned it was someone within band, and we still don't know if it was or not to this day.
Yeah.
So, but you've got to watch everyone.
Really, the industry is so tricky. You got to be careful, because, you know, between like them putting things in the contracts where they try to take your masters or something, and I make sure I own my master, you know. And you just so much, you know, playing around, trying to give you a crappy deal. And, you know, it's just cool that we can kind of control how we present ourselves and get out there. And I think, you know, from there, then you have to be smart, you know, and figure out how to take advantage of your music, you know, and get it out there to as many people and get it in different forms so people can get into it. You know, I think that's like what we have to do today. But
I mean, what you said with the contracts, that reminds me of a very funny story, actually. I think it was like I was getting ready to enroll for my first year at college, you know, for music, and they gave us all this contract, and it had like 10 different things on it for you to read, and then a thing to sign at the bottom. So we all read it and signed it at the bottom. And they said, didn't you ever think to turn page over? So we turned pages over, and it just said I agree to my soul now belonging to, such and such college. Just some rubbish about signing all your soul. No, like that's why you always check every bit of the paper and
Yeah.
everything else. And I
Yeah,
was
I
like,
mean, it's
right,
really. I mean, they're terrible stories in the music industry. Like my favorite artist, like George Clinton.
yeah,
He signed away his royalties in the late 70s because the record company came to him and he needed money to do the big tour for Funkadelic where they had the spaceship come down,
yeah,
the whole thing, and they basically made him sign this contract that took all his future royalties and gave him an upfront payment to pay for that tour.
yeah,
But he lost the actual royalties, so he doesn't get any money from any of that Parliament stuff.
yeah. He just got funding.
He gets totally ripped, and it's like,
Yeah,
his lawyer, I don't know if he had a lawyer to look at it, but it's like, that's the kind of classic problem that people run into. He's like, you got to be careful when the record company gives you the advance because you might never get a check again.
yeah. Oh, man. It's one of those things that it's a good thing that we can be independent these days.
Oh yeah, it's like, I think it's the way we have to be, and and sometimes you're like, okay, I want a label to help, but labels today don't do what they used to do. I mean, they used to give you tour support, they used to give you really good A&R promotion, where unless you're on the top tier, it's hard to get any of those services. They don't really do it, and so it's like you got to look at like what are they actually giving you, and if they're not really giving you anything, you might as well do yourself.
Exactly. I mean, it's like at the same time, though, I feel like it depends as well, like, say, what label you'd go to. I know that big label usually equals bad from what I've learned.
Yeah,
So,
smaller labels can be more like personal, and you can get to talk to somebody, get to know somebody, get somebody that actually does have your back, does send you roadies, does send you a sound guy, does send you a little van, lets you tour, gets you into venues. You want somebody that can actually be a booking manager, like an agent to get you booked on TV and radio and stuff. Then they're really doing their job. If it's a small label that does it, a small label could do that better than the big label for some people, where they actually care and they do it. If they do it, then that's what you want.
well, yeah, definitely. I mean, there's how do I put it? It's like just because a big label is a big label and they've got a lot of budget doesn't necessarily mean that they're always going to be better than the label that's just branded small. Because that small
A
label,
small label might be more willing for you to stay. Like, let's say you only can sell 50 to 100,000, right? You get on a big label, it's like if you don't break 250, they'll drop you, right?
exactly.
With a small label, they can actually live with you being at like this lower level, and they can actually make money. And so it's like if you're a label like that, then you could have like a 10-year, 15-year career with them, touring and doing all kinds of stuff. With the big label, they have this expectation that's unrealistic that you're going to somehow hit 250, 500,000, a million. It's like, but you're never going to really do that. So that's not going to work.
Well, I get you. It's like it's not only that, but like a smaller label's much more will likely be more willing to take a risk on you, especially if it's a niche label. So say like if it were, say, if I carried on doing more ambient stuff, if I ended up with an ambient label, they'd be more willing to take a risk on me than a big.
They got a market. They've got the fans. They know they've got the fans they can sell your stuff to. They know they can get to your base. They have a certain base, and they can sell to that base, and they can get you, into the scene. They'll get you to all the places in the ambient scene. They know all the tour managers. They know all the club managers. They know all the people. That's what you want. You want somebody that knows that scene. It's like the grunge scene with like Sub Pop in Seattle. Sub Pop like own that scene, and they just were able to generate all those bands. Like Nirvana just coming out of that scene. All those bands came out of that scene, and they controlled like a newsletter. They had like all this like links to press. They had links to overseas press. They had all this stuff, and it worked. And it was a niche. Grunge was a niche, but they were able to make it work. That's what you want.
And they were able to push it to mainstream after a while too, which, I mean, it just shows,
Yeah, if you believe in something, you can get it to go beyond your regional area. You can get like, band like The Clash, goes way beyond London, becomes like a movement, like Nirvana went beyond Seattle like the same way. You're like, damn, they kind of had that same kind of effect.
Yeah, I get you on that. I mean, it's like, what was it? I'm trying to think. It's like Queen, for example. They were quite, niche with like Bohemian Rhapsody. They didn't want to play that on stations, did they, at first?
No, because it's too long. I mean, they wanted to cut it down. It's one of those things like Hotel California was supposed to get cut down. That didn't get. But sometimes the record companies don't know, and because of the past, it's like, oh, it's got to be 3 minutes. It's like, no, sometimes it can be 7 or 8 minutes.
It doesn't matter. Like you wouldn't cut Hotel California down to 3 minutes, would you?
No, you can't. It's like the Eagles kind of were able to take the money they had made and kind of say, no, we're not cutting it down. And they tried to make them. I saw like a documentary. They really tried to get them to cut it, and they're like, no, it's not getting cut. And then they're like, the record company later was like, oh wow, that was a good decision. I'm like, that's not your decision.
No, the thing is, I'm grateful that song didn't get cut down because we wouldn't have got that blissful guitar solo.
Yeah, even like Bohemian Rhapsody. I mean, they didn't know what to do with it, but luckily Queen made a film. They made like a music video. The music video is what saved the song, because when they did the music video, you had to show it, and then suddenly because it was getting shown, it then got put on the radio because like people wanted to hear the whole thing, and so because they did the video, it kept it from being cut, and so that's kind of a cool thing. But it's like today you're like, where are the people trying to take that risk? You don't see people. I guess on YouTube people try to do it, but people are still kind of building for the 3 minute song, and you gotta get an artist that feels like, I don't care, the work deserves it, and then you'll see it happen again.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's like I know that there's a lot of like, especially in like England, there's a lot of like prog rock bands, like grassroots levels. But I feel like if there's any scene in England that would do something like that, it'd be them guys.
Yeah, they just gotta get one breakthrough. You gotta get one song where they suddenly get a video, it goes viral, and then suddenly like everybody starts looking at it, and boom, you'll get it. You'll get. And the thing about the industry, once you get one guy that does it, they'll clone it for like 2 years.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, look at Ed Sheeran, man. Look what happened to him.
Yeah.
I mean, ground's kind of swept from beneath his feet now.
Just the clones kind of kill it though. They don't seem to realize you take the one thing that worked and then make 1,000 versions of it, you're gonna kill it like this.
Yeah. It's like a good joke, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like a good joke. You can say it once, it's funny. Someone else can say it another time to you. It's like, yeah, bit of humor's still there, but by the fifth time you've heard it, you're like, you've killed this joke.
Yeah, you're done with it. That's what people started like, I'm done with disco because I don't want to keep on hearing that beat. I'm done. It's a kind of rebellion against it. Even though now people love it again, but it's like people just like they went too crazy using the same beats. Kind of like EDM. I always tell people like in EDMs, like, you're going to go down like disco if you keep on doing that drop in the same place,
Exactly, yeah. I mean, go on.
No, you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, I found this Scottish band recently called Churches, and they're like EDM. They've got a very strong 80s vibe to them.
Oh yeah, they got that new wave vibe because they're using like Junos. They're actually using real. They're using like Prophets and Junos and Moogs. They're using like the hardware synths from the 80s. So they sound like the 80s because they're actually using 80s synths. Then you know how to play them.
I mean, it's the only band that I've recently shown my mother, and she's been like, I like them. And I was like, right, they've got to be classed as 80s then. They've got to be.
Yeah, they got those vintage synths actually makes their sound. The fact that they're running like a Juno 106 and they're using mini modes. It's kind of like, if you want to sound like Duran Duran, if you want to sound like Flock of Seagulls, you kind of got to use what they were using.
Yeah.
In order to, or the Human League, that sound, but I kind of tend toward like Depeche Mode and New Order and Joy Division and The Cure. That's kind of where I'm echoing a Bunnyman. That's kind of where my head's at. But yeah, other people couldn't get into that. I'm a deep 80s guy. I mean, I was into like all those bands, like bands you probably won't even know. But
that's fair enough. I'm always willing to find some bands to listen to, mate.
Yeah, it's just like some of those bands back then. There was a time where people were just willing to experiment and willing to like let people go out there and do something different.
Yeah,
and it seems like there be less will to do that. It's like underground music is always there. You got the SoundClouds of the world, you got YouTube, you got all these other ways for people to get out. And I like to, with this show, I just like to use Instagram. I mean, because so many musicians are on Instagram, and I kind of troll Instagram looking for bands. I just look for bands all day, and any band that like really touches my ear, then I say, well, I'm gonna bring them on.
I mean, it's like, I have to agree with you on Instagram being flooded with musicians. There's that. I've only got like 270, like 280 like people that I follow, but that still they're all musicians, and there's just too many for me to listen to all of them's releases.
Yeah.
I sometimes feel really bad about it, but then I remember that, like, they probably got the time to listen to mine most of the time. And I'm like, fair enough.
Yeah, but it's just a great platform. I find it more useful than YouTube or Facebook for actually finding new artists. I for the last 2 years, almost, I would say 95% of my guests come from me going on Instagram and basically saying I like somebody's work and then telling them, hey, I got a podcast. You want to be on it? And I end up not having to talk to their agent. I mean, I've talked to some people that are pretty big, and I don't even have to talk to their agent. I am able to directly talk to them. And I think that's refreshing, to be able to kind of get past the agent and talk to the artist directly, which, some people don't let you do that. But most of the people I've been able to talk to, I've been able to do that. And that's kind of cool.
Yeah. I mean, I've never had to deal with any agents or like that myself, luckily. I mean,
well, they end up being a roadblock. So somebody sends me to an agent, then it takes like 3 weeks to get it done, when it could have got done in like a day.
Yeah. I mean, the only time I've had to deal with an agent was with, I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's like this YouTube music tutor called Damien Keys.
Oh, yeah, I know him.
Yeah, I ended up Skyping him, having an actual Skype talk with him to ask him some questions while I was doing an assignment on professionalism. That was fun. I didn't know what to do. I was just starstruck. I nearly fainted.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's cool. I mean, some people got to have an agent because that's what they want. But it's like when you're able to talk to somebody directly, it just is like, it just makes it work faster. Like if I have to go through an agent, it makes me go through all this stuff, and they got to fill out a questionnaire. They want to do this. They want to look at this. They want to see my stats. They want to see. Okay, fine. That's cool. But then now you turn it into something that's not fun. As soon as you make it not fun, then I'm like, maybe because I'm a musician too. It's like, if you make me take too much time on this, maybe I'm not going to do it.
That's relatable as hell. Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, because I'm doing this like on top of my music to give myself a way to connect to other musicians. But if you make it not fun, then I might not do it.
Yeah. I can't even describe how much of a mood that is. But yeah, I mean, I've had it before where it's like I've wanted to collab with an artist, and it's just ended up taking far too long to actually get them to come back to me. And I'm just going, you know what? Sorry, it's going out as an instrumental.
Yeah, I mean, because if you take too long to do it, like I did something kind of like what you did with Regina Faye. I had this really good collaboration with this like musician that actually was an actor. She's an actor, And she let, you know, typical of most actors, right? Most actors want to be musicians. Look at like Johnny Depp, right?
Oh yeah.
But they're like, they're not able to be as successful in music as they are in film. And so I was able to take this actress. She does like overdubs for cartoons. She does like horror movies. She does all this stuff. And then she wanted to do an album, and we did like this thing with Skype, and we were, you know, exchanging files. She was using like FL Studio. I'm doing my hardware studio, and we had a really good collaboration. And we never met. We never physically met. We never even, you know, ever got to do a show together. We just did this album, and it was a really good experience. And it was just because there was a good vibe. We didn't go through managers. We just had a good connection. And, you know, there's nothing like that when you actually have a connection and they're not making you wait and they're actually excited to do it. Then you kind of know you got the right project because somebody like really wants to be there. You know, they're there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it doesn't matter if like it's like with me and Regina. I know that I don't even remember whereabouts she lives in the UK. That's how like long it's been. But like how do I put it? It was just really easy because we were both very excited over. And you know, obviously, if you're both excited, you put in that work together.
Well, yeah, if you're both like in sync, you know, it's kind of like artistic, like when you have a band, right? And you get a drummer and you get a bass player, you get the whole group together, and you know you got the right band when they're like you don't gotta tell them nothing, right? You know, if you just start playing a note, the drummer starts playing something, and the bass player, and then suddenly, like most of the time, it's good, and you're like, wow, I don't have to even change it, you know. Then later you get you'll be able to talk to each other, but when you know that you guys are kind of in the same zone, then you're like, damn, that's what you want, you know, as a musician, when you're kind of like you're locked in and the bass player's locked into you, you know, you're like, wow. You don't got to tell them where you're going. They kind of know where you're going. And it's like that. There's nothing like that. That's awesome.
I've been in a few bands and I've never had a moment like that. But I have.
Yeah, it's cool if you get to have that because it's like that's one of the cool things when you get in a full band, and it's really cool.
I think the thing for me, the reason why how do I put it? It's like when I write, say, if I go into say a jam, I'll always go in with something pre-planned, like composition-wise, because I think there's two types of composers. There are those that jam it, and there are those that plan it out, and you know, say, oh, we're going to do a key change here, move into a certain, you know, maybe, you know, a certain type of shuffle. I'm one of those where it's like I've got to have some sort of plan, some sort of chord progression that I'm following. I've never had something where I've just come out with a riff and drummers nailed it, bassist has done a killer bass line. You know.
Yeah, I guess it's like I'm in my 50s and I had a lot of bands in my 20s where we kind of were into that because we're kind of like jazz oriented.
Yeah.
I might come in with like a chord progression, you know, and I come in with it and I'll start. I'm a keyboardist, so I might have like a structure and I'll have it, but I'm willing to change it. And so like I'll come into it and I had a rhythm idea, but then the drummer comes in and he's like better at doing it than my 808. so then it's like you know, I might have an idea for the symbols on my 808, but he's going to do it more natural than me. So I'm going to kind of like, well, here's a kind of idea, and then you let him kind of flow with it, and that's you know. So you come in with some preconceived ideas, but a lot of it's like, okay, I'm going to take advantage of the fact that this guy's a bass player, and he's gonna take my bass hand. And he's gonna hear what I'm doing, and then he's gonna like, okay, I can actually work with that and make something better.
Yeah.
And that's what's really cool in that type of collaboration. So you have a little bit of planning, but a lot of like openness, you know.
Yeah, I feel like it's done like with how it is with most music. No, I get it's just through iteration, and obviously, if you're passing an idea around 4 people, it's gonna get iterated on very quickly.
Yeah, just you get this feel, and some people have a better feel together than others. You know, some people are just like, that's the right guy for that group. You know, like Ringo compared to Pete Best. You know, Ringo was the better guy. you know, that was going to work. So you just sometimes you get a guy who's like he's in tune, he's actually doing it the way you need it to get done, and it's hard to tell. It's like a chemistry. It's like a relationship chemistry that happens in a musical group.
Relationship chemistry.
Yeah, I mean, your bands can be just as bad as your significant other.
I wouldn't know. I've not had eye for in a while. Way.
You can have a problem. Your bandmates you can have like a love-hate situation with your bandmates, and you're like, damn.
To be fair, when I started this project off, it was almost like the other band that I were in for. They were like a cheat. They were like a girlfriend that thought I was cheating on them.
It can feel like that, You get with a band, and then suddenly you start working with somebody else. People get jealous, or you say you want to do this, and then they don't want to do it, and they want to do the same thing they've been doing for the last 10 shows, and you want to change it up, and then suddenly they don't want to change it. And everybody gets, people start getting mad, people having fights. It's a whole different level. Yeah. And you're like, damn, it's like I got to deal with all these personalities.
Oh man, oh man, I'll tell you what. If the band that happened to me with I'd be, oh god, you know what? Forget that. I don't even want to remember it. But
you want it to not be a big problem, but sometimes it's like no matter what, eventually you hit that place where it becomes a problem. You have this kind of like sunshine stage where everything's great,
the honeymoon,
and then you get to the stage where it's like midnight. Everything goes dark. It's done.
That's it. You're going to bed, and you're not going to talk out your issues before then.
Done. It's done. It's like no talking. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Yeah. Oh man. Oh god. No, because that's what happened. It was literally what were it? It was like that overly attached girlfriend that sees that you're hanging with a friend and is immediately like, "Be her for you," and you're like, "No, it's not like that, babe. Please." You dump your ass right there and then.
Yeah. Well, it's been great talking to you. This has been a little extended show, but I love the fact that you're doing this kind of progressive, concept-oriented music. It's like instrumental, and you're collaborating. And I'd love to hear that project that you haven't been able to release because of COVID. Once you get that out there. Yeah. If anything else you put out as a project, let us know. We always have people come back on the show.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, I'd love to come back on sometime.
Yeah, great.
Right.
I hope you have a great day. It's like it's 1:32 here in northeast of the U.S. and I hope you're having a good time where you are. Stay safe and happy holidays if I don't talk to you again.
No worries. You too. It's been a pleasure to be on the show.
Thank you.